Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of the podcast that we are, since last episode, are henceforth going to be calling Politixing. So, this will be the first episode of Politixing. The title for this episode is Face Eating Leopard at My Face. Um, yeah, it's I'm still going to title it as Politicsing Episode 4, which means that Politicsing will never have an official Episode 1 because I want to preserve the continuity of um, this platform of exchange and discussion and not want to introduce like an arbitrary new beginning, new genesis of sorts. I want it to continue to flow as it has since the beginning, and that's why Politicsing's first episode will be episode 4. So, this episode is going to be a little bit of a piggyback. It is going to be piggybacking on the previous one, and it is because I've just been um, I've just been baffled by the fact that the regret of the Republican voting base is still continuing to increase. To my great surprise, because as I discussed in the last episode, there wasn't really anything surprising about what's being done right now by the Trump administration. I mean, sure, is it chaotic? Yes. Um, of course, very, very much so. But there is very little that is being done right now that couldn't be deduced from what was being promised during the campaign. So that the increase in the regret from the Trump voting base, or rather the Trump voting demographic or electorate, has increased proportionally to my surprise as at the number of people that are regretting. I'm still kind of baffled. Like, what are people regretting exactly? But this time, I was particularly pushed to make a new episode because I stumbled across a video. It's from a podcast whose name I forget, but I'm going to include the link to the original exchange, the original podcast, in the description of the video. And that video, that exchange, perfectly illustrates one of the types of voters that we discussed in the last episode, namely the what I baptized the dummy voter. And I know dummy can sound like a rather pejorative word, but it's in this case, I actually think that it's descriptive in the sense that this is somebody that's being conned or somebody that has been conned, and that video perfectly illustrates such a voter. So, a brief description of the video for those that perhaps won't have the time to watch it, although I invite everyone that watches this video to go watch it. So basically, we have it's an interview between the host and a guest, and the guest is a former IRS employee. He's just been laid off. It seems to be suggesting that he's been laid off as the result of the actions from Doge, from the Elon and Trump's sponsored non-governmental government agency. It's kind of weird where they lay in that regard. So that IRS employee voted for Trump. He says so during the exchange. Uh, Among the reasons that he mentions for having voted for Trump is that he agrees that he agreed with Trump on the Western governments, department. Like basically, he agreed that there was a lot of waste and abuse and fraud in the government, and that's one of the reasons why he supported Trump. And he ended up voting for him in the election. And obviously, Trump wins the election afterwards. And after winning, he institutes Doge, or rather, he appoints Elon and institutes Doge. And then, Doge does what it's been doing since it's been instituted, and they basically got the agency that he works for, the IRS, something which, I mean, I'll just say that it's one of the things that he was talking about during the campaign again, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. So Doge does what it does, and then it just ends up, kicking him aside basically. So basically, he gets fired. He shows up to work one day. His computer doesn't let him enter the system. He quickly realizes, him along with many of his coworkers, that this is the beginning of the end, and that sentiment is confirmed later when they are basically told that this is it for them, that they are being fired. And like I said, this illustrates the dummy voter for a few reasons. First of all, the fact that he did agree with the waste. It's like, you work for the IRS, my dude. Why did you never try to look into the specific of what they mean by waste? Because if you did, and again, like, this is something that I've been saying since I've started this critique. They haven't really been trying to hide the ball about what their intentions were. So if you listen to them, you would have realized that the IRS was among the targeted agencies. They were talking about gutting the IRS during the campaign. And so, if you are an IRS agent, if your livelihood depends on your being employed at the IRS or by the IRS, what makes you think? What allows you to think that you are not part of the waste that's being decried, that's being demonized by these people, by Trump and the likes? I mean, this is just, I don't know if it is, if we can call it arrogance or ignorance or hubris, but why do you allow yourself to be convinced that you are not part of this waste that's being promised to be cut off? You know, this is incredible. So this voter that belongs to the category of the dummy voter finds out that, they actually did what they promised to do, which was to significantly reduce, if not eliminate, because right now they're talking about eliminating the administrative state, which includes, among other agencies, the IRS. And obviously now it affects him, and now he does realize that those promises, those campaign promises, are bad, are actually negative, and net negative for, for the American population in general. And it starts to regret. And in the video, he decries the fact that he's been fired. Obviously, he complains about the fact that it's, in his opinion, an unjust firing. He makes sure to point out that he was among the competent. I mean, he self-described competent employee. But here's the problem. First of all, his complaint, his lament was was soaked in a lot of I don't know how I can explain it, like self-aggrandizing, if I can say so, uh, view of himself and of his work. And also it was just completely um, void of compassion or even realism when it comes to the view of his other colleagues. So in other words, his complaint was mostly it could be summarized as, I was competent, I deserve to be here, I voted so that my other coworkers could be fired. So in other words, if the same event had taken place, but with the only adjustment being that he was not among the ones being fired, he wouldn't have batted an eye. He wouldn't have reconsidered his vote. He wouldn't have reconsidered his view of politics. It is only because he was personally affected, which brings me to something else that I discussed in the last episode, and which might become a common theme. But why is it that the conservatives' mind seems to only believe in things that have already been empirically shown once it affects them? You can see countless examples of that. I mean, the I guess the most famous example is the conservative parents or family member that thinks that things like a homosexual sexual orientation is a sin, and that makes someone a bad person, somebody that ought to be either interned in a mental institution or put aside on the periphery of society. And up until the point it affects a family member, a sibling, a son, a daughter. I mean, how many times have we seen that? How many times have we seen that? The same thing with the trans issue, and you see many examples of that playing out as we speak. People that think that trans people are nothing but deranged people that are mentally impaired and that are inherently evil people. Up until the point, once again, it affects either them personally or somebody they are very close to. And it's, I mean, we could even go back in history, and you could see that the same thing was being applied even to race relations, where somebody will believe that, let's say, black people uh, are an inferior, evil, society poisoning group of people, blah blah blah, all the way until they befriend or fall in love with or uh, marry into, I don't know, the family of somebody that is black, and then all of a sudden they see what has been shown to them empirically decades in advance, that yes, those beliefs are silly, and yeah, that those beliefs are silly and not worth being held. And it's the same thing here. It was a bad proposition the minute that proposition that we can say is still being carried out as we speak right now is still a bad proposition, the one of gutting the administrative states. There is a reason why many of those agencies are in place. I mean, I'm sure that if we were to put all of them under a microscope, we could see some fraud, waste, or abuse. But I mean, the solution cannot be to just eliminate a lot of them. I mean, you talk about your USAID, you talk about your IRS, you talk about your EPAs. It's incredible, and the dummy voters, right? They do not see the um, the the importance of those agencies and the work they do, all uh, all the way until the point where it affects them personally. And I gotta say, it's I mean, as much as we want to be empathetic, it becomes hard to sympathize with somebody that puts into the highest office a face eating leopard and sees his face being eaten by the face eating leopard. I mean, again, they didn't make any mystery of what they would do once in power. And I mean, obviously, in this discussion, I'm using that video as a sort of an anchor, a trampoline to to discuss that general attitude. But unfortunately, it is something that is way too common among the American people and by extension among the American electorate. How many studies and polls and testimonies and stuff like that do you have to see before you realize that either something is good or something is bad or something is neither good or bad? Meaning that it's either that it's not deserving of being demonized, for example. You know, so I guess the question that I will leave you with is, where do you go with where do you go from this point where you just have a significant part of the American people, and by extension again by the American electorate, that just denies reality? I mean, what do you do? Where do you go from there? you know, where do you go when the moments that you realize that a huge swath of the population um, will only will not acknowledge the toxic attribute of something or the beneficial attribute of something until it either one um, affects them personally or two benefit them personally, respectively. I mean, this is it is a strange place to stand on as a democracy, because democracy requires that everyone at least subscribe to some level to um, sort of a uniform vision of what constitutes truth and falsehood and scam and shame, you know. Um, and when you have people that just like, I mean, you to cite to cite Donald Trump, if you have people that see somebody see somebody in this case Donald Trump shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, and not only not stop supporting him, endorsing him, but sometimes they would actually try to convince you that the shooting didn't happen at all. That yes, you saw him hold a bullet and press the trigger, and the person 5 feet away dropped, but actually that bullet didn't come from his gun. He was just pretend shooting, and the bullet must have come from somewhere else, perhaps from behind Donald Trump or from behind the victim. I mean, this is where we stand, and I don't know where we go from here. So yeah, this was I just wanted to have a discussion about that and to bring those interrogation to all of you, and we'll continue discussing those events and what they mean to the American society and the American democracy. But we ought to do better. We ought to do better. We shouldn't wait for the face eating leopard to be eating our faces before we realize that they were indeed serious about being face eating leopard, you know. So that's it for this episode. thank you for your time and attention, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you.